Rachel Morris, 27, paralegal, living alone in a small downtown apartment complex. The new neighbor. When Rachel first moved into her new apartment in downtown Denver, everything felt perfect, a clean slate after a bad breakup. The building was old but charming, filled mostly with quiet tenants. The only vacant unit had been 3B, directly across from her. On her second night, she noticed a man moving boxes into 3B, mid-30s, tall, pale, with dark circles under his eyes. When she greeted him, he gave a slight nod but didn't speak. He moved strangely slow, like every motion was deliberate. Later that night, she heard faint scratching through the wall. See, it wasn't rats. It was rhythmic, like someone carving into wood. The next morning, she passed him in the hallway. "Hey, sorry if that was you fixing something last night," she said with a polite laugh. He stared at her for a long moment, then smiled. Not friendly, just off. "I was making a list," he whispered. Rachel forced a laugh. "A list?" He nodded slowly, eyes locked on hers. "Everyone needs a list." She laughed it off and went to work. But that night, when she got home, she found a folded piece of paper slipped under her door. It had 5 names written in messy handwriting. The last one was hers. The scratching, Rachel tried to stay calm. Maybe it was a prank. She tossed the note into the trash, but the feeling of being watched clung to her all day. That night, the scratching started again, louder, closer. It was coming from behind her headboard, the shared wall with 3B. "Seriously?" she muttered, banging on the wall. The sound stopped instantly. A minute later, 3 soft knocks echoed back. She froze. "Okay, no way." The next morning, she went to the landlord, Mr. Price. "The guy in 3B, he's doing weird stuff at night," she said. Price frowned. "Ma'am, 3B's been vacant for 2 weeks. No one's moved in yet." Rachel blinked. "That's impossible, I saw him." Price shook his head. "No one's got the key but me." She went back to her apartment, shaken, checking the hallway. The door to 3B looked normal, clean, locked with a small note taped to it, "Under renovation." That night, as she lay awake, the scratching started again, deeper, angrier. Then came the voice, muffled through the wall, "You shouldn't have thrown it away." Rachel leapt from bed, heart racing, and pressed her ear to the wall. Silence. Then, from right behind her ear, a whisper so close it made her skin crawl. "You're next." The police report. The next day, Rachel called the police. 2 officers arrived, a young female rookie and an older sergeant. They checked 3B, shining flashlights through the empty apartment. "See? No one here," the sergeant said. The walls were bare except for one thing, faint etchings in the drywall near the shared wall. Names, 5 of them. The same list from the note. The last one again, Rachel Morris. The officers exchanged uneasy glances. "We'll file a report," the sergeant said. "Maybe someone broke in." "Keep your door locked, miss." That night, Rachel tried sleeping with headphones on. Around 2:30 a.m., she woke up to her phone buzzing. Unknown number, a text. "I crossed one name off." She stared at the screen, her breath catching. She checked the time at 2:33 a.m. Then sirens blared outside her window. She peeked through the blinds. Police cars surrounded the building across the street. The morning news confirmed it. A woman 2 buildings over had been found murdered in her apartment. Her name? Tracy Johnson, second on the list. The visit, Rachel took off work the next day, her nerves shot. She taped over her peephole, double-checked every lock, and kept a knife in the nightstand. Around noon, there was a knock at her door. "Maintenance?" a voice called. She peeked through the peephole. A man in a grey uniform, face half turned away. "Mr. Price didn't mention any repairs," she said through the door. "No, just a quick inspection." Something about his tone made her stomach drop. She stayed silent. The man waited a moment, then said softly, "You're making it harder for me." "Rachel!" She screamed, grabbed her phone, and called 911. By the time police arrived, the hallway was empty, but taped to her door this time was another note, a new list, 4 names. Hers was now second. That night, she didn't sleep. She sat by the window with her lights off, watching the hallway through the crack under her door. At 3 a.m., she saw the shadow of feet stop right outside her door, then a whisper, so quiet it barely broke the silence, crossing another off. The discovery, the next morning, Police found the body of a tenant from the third floor, a man Rachel barely knew. His name was Thomas Reed, third on the original list. Now there were only 3 names left. Rachel begged the landlord to let her out of her lease. He agreed to process the paperwork the next day. "Stay with family tonight," he urged, but she had no one nearby. That night she locked herself inside again. The scratching returned, a louder, frantic, desperate. She could hear the drywall cracking. Then a sudden thud from 3B. Another. She couldn't take it anymore. She grabbed her phone's flashlight, crept into the hallway and turned toward the door of 3B. It was open. Just a sliver. She pushed it open wider and nearly gagged. Inside, the walls were covered with newspaper clippings, murder victims, obituaries and scribbled lists. In the middle of the room, nailed to the wall, was a photo of her, her face crossed out in red marker. The trap Rachel ran. She didn't even shut her door. She sprinted to the front lobby, banging on Mr. Price's office door. No answer. When she turned back, the hallway lights began to flicker. She could hear footsteps upstairs, slow, dragging. She dialed 911, breathless. "He's here! He's in the building!" The dispatcher's calm voice came through. "Stay where you are, ma'am. Officers are 2 minutes away." But the footsteps were closer now. She ducked into the stairwell, clutching her phone. Through the metal door she heard humming, a man's voice, soft and eerie. "Everyone needs a list." She bolted up the stairs, bursting through the second-floor door, only to freeze. Every door in the hallway had a note taped to it, each with a name crossed out. The only one left untouched was hers. Then her phone buzzed. A text from her own number. "Turn around." The face in the dark Rachel turned. The man from 3B stood at the end of the hall, smiling. He wasn't carrying a weapon, just a small, leather-bound notebook. "Why are you doing this?" she shouted. He tilted his head. "Because you looked at me." He stepped closer. They all looked. "You all thought I didn't exist." She backed away, fumbling for her phone light. He lunged. She screamed and slammed a door shut between them, locking herself in someone's apartment. She could hear him pacing outside, whispering her name. "Rachel. Rachel." Then silence. When police arrived minutes later, they found the hallway empty again, but in the notebook he'd dropped a final entry. Last name, Rachel Morris. Time 2:47 a.m. Method unknown. The aftermath: Rachel moved out the next morning under police escort. The case made local headlines. Denver apartment stalker still missing. The man in 3B was never identified. No ID, no rental record, no fingerprint match. It was like he'd never existed. Rachel tried to rebuild her life, moving to another city, changing jobs. But she never slept through the night again. A year later, while unpacking boxes in her new apartment, she found something wedged between her moving papers, a folded note, same handwriting. It said, "I missed one," and below it, a new list, 5 names. The last one, Rachel Morris. Ethan Cole, 32, freelance truck mechanic driving from Salt Lake City to Reno. The endless road Ethan Cole had been driving since dawn, the sun melting into the horizon behind a stretch of cracked Nevada asphalt. The desert was silent, except for the low hum of his pickup's engine and the faint rattle of tools in the back seat. He was used to solitude. Years of long highway jobs had made him comfortable with silence. But this part of Route 95 felt wrong. The air was heavier, the radio crackled with static, and the sky dimmed faster than it should have. He slowed as he saw an old beat-up Chevy parked on the shoulder ahead, hood up, hazard lights flickering like dying fireflies. He rolled down his window and called out, "You need a hand?" A tall man in his 40s emerged from the shadow, his face hidden by the brim of a trucker cap. "So appreciate it," the man said, his voice oddly calm, almost rehearsed. As Ethan stepped out to check the engine, the man stood perfectly still, just watching. There was no gratitude in his eyes, only something cold and analytical, as if studying Ethan's every move. When Ethan leaned under the hood, he heard the soft click of a car door opening behind him, his passenger door. He straightened up. The stranger was gone. Only his pickup door swung open in the wind. The stranger's smile, Ethan froze, his pulse thundering. He peered inside his truck. Nothing seemed taken, but the faint smell of cologne hung in the air. He turned back toward the Chevy, but the man was already sitting inside, staring ahead at the road, lips curved into a thin, unsettling smile. "Got it fixed," the man muttered. "Thanks for the help." Ethan forced a tight nod, climbed back into his truck and drove off, but his rearview mirror caught something chilling, the Chevy pulling out right after him. The same dim headlights trailing him for the next 30 miles. Night fell quickly, the desert stretching endless in both directions. No signal, no towns. Ethan's gut told him to pull into the next rest stop, maybe grab coffee, but when he finally found one, a rundown gas station with one flickering light, the Chevy pulled in right behind him. He stepped inside the station. The old clerk barely looked up, muttering, "No bathrooms, no trouble." Ethan turned to check the lot through the window. The Chevy was parked facing the road now, headlights off. When he stepped back outside, the man was standing by the pumps, smiling again. Same eerie calm, same cold eyes. "Forgot to thank you," he said, "for stopping back there." "How'd you know I'd stop again?" Ethan asked, voice tight. The man's grin widened. "I've been collecting people who do." Ethan gunned it out of the gas station lot, gravel kicking up behind his tires. His mind raced. Was the guy bluffing, or was he one of those drifters who preyed on travelers? He drove until the needle hovered near empty, spotting a small roadside motel ahead. Desert mirage. Inside, the air smelled like mildew and burnt coffee. The woman at the counter handed him a key without a word, eyes hollow. Room 6. He parked right outside, curtains drawn, lights flickering. As he unpacked, his headlights caught a reflection. The same Chevy parked across the road under a dead streetlight. No movement, just sitting there. Ethan turned off his lamp, heart pounding. Hours passed. At 2 a.m., something scraped against the motel window. He crept closer. A folded photograph lay pressed against the glass. An old Polaroid of a young couple smiling beside that same Chevy. The man from the road was in it. But so was Ethan's truck, faintly visible in the background, though the photo looked years old. His breath caught. That was impossible. He hadn't even owned his truck that long. Outside, the Chevy's engine rumbled to life. The footsteps in the dust. Ethan couldn't sleep. Each sound outside made his skin crawl. Wind brushing sand against the walls, faint creaks from the roof, then footsteps. He grabbed a wrench and peeked through the blinds. The Chevy was gone. Instead, faint footprints trailed from his truck to his door, fresh in the dust. He backed away, clutching his wrench tighter. A knock came. Gentle, polite. "Mr. Cole," the voice said softly. "You left your tools." Ethan's blood froze. He never told the man his last name. Silence stretched. Then the sound of a lighter flicking, once, twice, followed by the faint smell of burning. Smoke began seeping from under the door. He kicked open the back window and leapt out, scraping his arm on the sill. Behind him, his room glowed orange as flames licked the curtains. The Chevy sat idling by the road again. In the driver's seat, that same grin illuminated by firelight, the desert chase Ethan jumped into his truck, tires screeching as he tore down the road. His headlights cut through the night, illuminating nothing but empty highway. But every few minutes the Chevy's headlights would reappear in the mirror, closer, closer. He floored it, heart hammering, scanning the horizon for any sign of life. Just endless desert. Then his radio crackled, static at first, then faint breathing. "Don't bother running," a voice said through the speaker. "You're already mine." Ethan ripped the radio cord out, panic clawing at his chest. When his engine sputtered, gas nearly gone, he saw a small road branching off toward an abandoned way station. He swerved hard, hoping to lose him. But the Chevy followed. He cut his lights and coasted to a stop behind the building, heart racing in the dark. Silence, then crunching gravel. Footsteps again. The face behind the lighter flashlight beam swept across the broken windows. Ethan crouched low, his breath shallow. The beam paused. Right on him, he ran. The man's voice echoed, "You're lucky, most don't make it this far." Ethan ducked behind an old vending machine, gripping his wrench tight. The light moved again, closer. Then it stopped. The man's shadow fell across the floor, and in his other hand he held something shiny. A collection of car keys, and dozens of them, strung together like trophies. Ethan's heart sank. The collector. He waited until the man passed, then lunged, slamming the wrench against his shoulder. The man dropped, groaning, but as Ethan ran for the door, the collector's voice hissed, "You think this ends here?" Outside, his Chevy idled, but the passenger seat light was on. Inside sat another man, and lifeless, eyes wide open. The truth in the trunk. Ethan jumped into the Chevy, desperate to escape. But when he turned, something in the back seat caught his eye, an open duffel bag. Inside were driver's licenses, photos, and a small blood-stained map of Nevada highways marked with red X's. One of them circled his route, Salt Lake to Reno. He realized then, this wasn't random. The collector planned his victims, waited for them to stop, marked them. He tried to start the car, so it sputtered, dead. The collector limped out of the station, blood trailing down his arm. "You drive my road," he muttered. "You belong here." Ethan bolted into the desert, running blindly under the moonlight. The collector's trophy by dawn, Ethan collapsed near the highway, gasping, dirt caked on his face. A trucker stopped, helped him into his cab, and radioed police. By noon, officers found the burned motel, the way station, and the Chevy abandoned, empty. Ethan gave his statement, shaking. But days later, when he returned to pick up his truck from impound, something was off. In the passenger seat, taped to the dashboard, was a Polaroid. Him asleep in his motel bed, taken from inside the room. On the back, one sentence written in neat capital letters, "You're part of the collection now." Laura Jensen, 27, freelance illustrator living alone in an old apartment complex. The strange noise. Through the wall, Laura Jensen had lived in her Minneapolis apartment for 3 months, tucked on the 3rd floor of a worn brick building, where the hallways smelled faintly of bleach and cigarette smoke. She worked late, headphones on, drawing digital art while snow fell quietly outside. But lately, something strange had started happening, soft tapping through the wall beside her bed. 3 knocks, always after midnight. At first she ignored it. Old buildings creaked, pipes shifted. But one night the tapping changed and slow, deliberate, like someone mimicking her breathing. She knocked back, half joking. 3 seconds later, something tapped back. The sound seemed to follow her, the same wall, the same rhythm. When she pressed her ear against it, she swore she heard a faint whisper. "Don't move." Laura froze. She turned off her light, heart hammering, and sat in darkness listening to the faint sound of breathing, coming not through the wall anymore, but from inside her apartment. When she turned on her lamp, the tapping stopped, but the faintest outline of a fingerprint smudged the inside of her window pane, from the inside. The man in the hallway. The next morning, Laura asked the building manager, an elderly man named Frank, if anyone lived in 4B, the apartment next to hers. He frowned. 4B's been empty since July. Why? Laura's stomach dropped. "You're sure?" He nodded. Pipes froze, places gutted. No one's supposed to be in there. That night she came home from groceries and found muddy footprints outside her door, leading from the stairwell, stopping right at her welcome mat. The prints were too large to be hers. She called out nervously, "Hello?" Silence. As she fumbled for her keys, a door creaked open down the hall, 4B. A man stepped halfway out, tall, wearing an oversized grey hoodie, eyes shadowed under the flickering hall light. He just stood there staring. "Sorry, wrong door," Laura muttered, locking herself in quickly. Her heart was pounding so hard she thought it would burst. That night the tapping came again, slower this time. Then a voice low and clear. "Don't tell him I'm here." Laura froze, pressing her hand to her mouth. She wanted to believe it was a dream, until she saw the doorknob on her bedroom door twitch, as if someone on the other side was testing the lock. The note under the door by the next morning. Laura was exhausted, nerves shredded. She told herself it had to be a squatter, some junkie who found his way into 4B. She left early for coffee, hoping daylight would ease her fear. When she returned, there was a folded piece of paper under her door. No envelope, no name. She opened it carefully. You shouldn't have knocked back. Her legs nearly gave out. She checked her locks, double-bolted every door, and called the building manager again, but he didn't answer. When she went to his office, it was dark, empty. That night, Laura sat awake, clutching a kitchen knife. Hours passed without noise. She almost believed it was over, until she heard the distinct sound of something dragging along her wall. She whispered, "Stop," tears streaming down her cheeks. Then her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. It read, "I like when you talk to me." She dropped the phone. The number was local. The sender's name displayed as 4B. The break-in Laura contacted the police, trembling as she explained. Officer Daniels took her statement and checked the neighboring apartment. "It's empty," he confirmed. "No furniture, no utilities. You sure you didn't imagine it?" She felt humiliated. Maybe it was all in her head. That night, she tried to sleep with music playing softly, white noise to cover her paranoia. At 2:47 a.m., her apartment went dark. The power died, then faint footsteps echoed down the hall. Slow, measured, closer. Her bedroom door creaked open. "Who's there?" she cried, flashlight trembling in her hand. A shape stood in the doorway, tall, motionless. For a moment she thought she saw a grin. The lights flickered back on, and the figure was gone. Her front door now stood wide open, cold air spilling in. On the doormat smeared in dirt were 2 words, "You looked." The hidden door. The next morning, Laura refused to stay another night. She packed fast, but paused when she heard a faint thud from behind her bed wall, the wall shared with 4B. She pushed the bed aside, and her blood ran cold. There was a small square panel, painted over, hidden beneath layers of wallpaper. A maintenance crawl door. Hands trembling, she pried it open with a screwdriver. Behind it, a narrow, dark passage connecting the 2 apartments. Inside were empty food wrappers, a sleeping bag, and dozens of Polaroids pinned to the wall. Each one showed her apartment, her sleeping, eating, showering. In every photo, the same shadowed face appeared in the corner, watching. Suddenly, a soft whisper came from the tunnel. "Don't look at me!" Laura screamed and slammed the panel shut, shoving her dresser against it. The escape attempt. Laura called 911 again, hysterical. When officers arrived, the crawl space was empty. No Polaroids, no sleeping bag. The panel was gone, sealed shut as if it never existed. "Ma'am, you might want to get some rest," one officer said softly. She spent the next day in a hotel downtown. But at 3 a.m., her phone buzzed again. A new number this time. "You shouldn't have left." Attached was a picture of her hotel door taken minutes earlier. She bolted the lock and stayed up until sunrise, checking under the bed, the closet, even the air vents. By morning, she decided she was leaving Minneapolis entirely. She called Frank, begging him to let her break her lease. But the person who answered wasn't Frank. A calm male voice said, "Frank's gone. Apartment 4B is mine now. Outline 7, the confrontation." Laura drove straight back to the building with police in tow, but the manager's office was boarded up. Police tape across the door. A neighbor whispered, "Frank disappeared last week." Her stomach twisted. She led them upstairs to her apartment, trembling. When officers kicked open the door to 4B, the stench hit first. Rot, damp, something sour. Inside, they found hundreds of Polaroids and piles of torn clothing. But the most disturbing part, a wall covered in notes, each written in the same hand. "Don't knock. Don't tell him. She's perfect." Laura's photo was pinned in the center, circled in red marker. The detective turned to her. "You said you saw him?" She nodded weakly. He hesitated. "We found Frank's body here last week. Whoever you saw, it wasn't him." The haunting ending. Laura moved to Oregon months later, changed her number, and tried to rebuild her life. She never told anyone where she went, not even her family. But one snowy morning, she came home to find a cardboard box on her porch. No return label. Inside was an old Polaroid camera and a single photo, her front door taken from the street. On the back, written in red ink, "I never left 4B." Main character, Evan Moore, 31. Traveling cross-country to Los Angeles for a new job. Each outline 300 words, atmospheric, realistic, and based on true U.S. psychological horror tone. The isolated stop even had been driving for hours through the empty stretch of New Mexico desert. No cell service, no exits, nothing but the faded yellow lines and a sun bleeding into the horizon. His old Ford pickup hummed beneath him, the AC long since broken. When his gas light blinked on, panic set in. Then, like a mirage, a flickering neon sign appeared, "Grant's 24-hour gas and goods." The place looked abandoned. Dusty pumps, a broken vending machine, and a single light buzzing over the station door. He hesitated before pulling in. Inside, the air was stale. heavy with the smell of motor oil and something metallic. Behind the counter stood a man in his 50s, tall, gaunt, with sunken cheeks and watery blue eyes. His name tag read Cliff. "Late night, huh?" Cliff rasped, his lips curling into a half-smile. Evan nodded. "Just need a fill-up." Cliff stared at him too long before replying, "Pump 3's working." "So I think." When Evan stepped back outside, he noticed something unsettling. 3 other cars parked near the station, all empty, doors still open. And from the desert wind, a faint metallic sound echoed, like something tapping against a car door. The locked bathroom after fueling up, Evan went to use the restroom. The door was locked. He knocked, no answer. He turned to Cliff, who was watching him from behind the counter with that same lifeless stare. "Someone in there?" Cliff's smile widened. "Not anymore." Evan blinked. "What?" Cliff didn't answer. Uneasy, Evan walked around the side of the building. The bathroom window was cracked open. Inside he saw a faint light, and something that looked like a shoe sticking out from behind the stall. "Hey, you okay?" he called, but the wind drowned his voice. When he returned to the front, Cliff was gone. The bell above the door jingled softly, though no one had entered. Evan stepped inside, calling out. The aisles were empty now, yet he could hear faint breathing, heavy, deliberate, coming from behind the counter. He leaned over. Nothing there but an open trapdoor leading down into darkness. Then Cliff's voice floated up, low and calm. "You're not supposed to see that." The basement against every instinct, Evan backed away, but his phone still had no signal. He grabbed a wrench from the nearest shelf, inching toward the door. That's when he heard something from the trapdoor, a faint whimper. "Help! Me!" It was a woman's voice, weak. Evan's stomach clenched. He knelt down, shining his phone flashlight into the opening. Stairs led down into a concrete room filled with old oil drums and cages. In one of them he saw her, a woman in her 20s, wrists tied, mouth gagged. Before he could react, a sharp clang echoed. The trapdoor slammed shut above him. He was locked in. Footsteps creaked above, slow, measured, dragging. Cliff's voice drifted through the cracks. "Should have stayed on the road, kid." Evan pounded the door until his fists bled. From behind him came another sound, chains scraping the floor. Someone else was in the dark with him. The others. Evan turned his flashlight around. In the far corner, another cage moved, a man inside, barely conscious, eyes glazed with terror. "Please," the man croaked, "don't make noise." "He'll come back." Evan tried prying at the trapdoor, but it wouldn't budge. Sweat dripped down his face. "Who is he?" The man whispered. "He's been here for years." Picks travelers off the highway. A loud metallic bang echoed through the basement. The light flickered. Then from the shadows Cliff appeared, holding a long iron bar, grinning. "You two making friends?" Evan froze. The old man's eyes gleamed in the flashlight beam, his voice trembling with manic excitement. "You ever wonder what happens when folks vanish out here?" He swung the bar against the cage. Sparks flew. The lights cut out. In the dark, Cliff whispered, "Let's play a game. If you find the stairs before I find you, you get to leave." And then silence, except for the creak of footsteps circling closer. The escape attempt. Evan's heart hammered as he crawled along the concrete floor. The woman whimpered in the dark, whispering directions. Left corner. There's another door. He found it, a rusted hatch leading to a maintenance tunnel. He pried it open and crawled through, scraping his arms on jagged metal. Behind him, Cliff's laughter echoed. "You can't run in the dark, boy. I built this place." The tunnel smelled of rot and gasoline. His flashlight flickered, barely lighting the path. He heard something metallic dragging, closer, closer. Then he felt it, a hand brush his ankle. He kicked back, scrambled forward, and burst through another door, into the desert night. He ran barefoot across the gravel, lungs burning. In the distance, headlights appeared, a passing semi. He waved frantically, "Help!" But as the truck slowed, Evan turned and saw Cliff standing outside the station, smiling in the light. The truck driver stepped out, confused. Then Cliff raised his gun. The shot and the silence. A gunshot cracked through the desert. Evan dove behind a fuel pump as the driver fell. Cliff reloaded calmly, humming some old country tune. "Don't worry, son. You'll join the others soon enough." Evan spotted the driver's dropped flashlight and hurled it toward the pumps. It clattered loudly, drawing Cliff's attention. Then Evan made a break for the car. He jumped in, hands trembling, key twisting. The engine roared to life. Cliff fired again. Glass shattered. The bullet grazed Evan's arm. He hit the gas, tires screeching, speeding down the highway. In his rearview mirror, Cliff stood in the glow of the flames, the station slowly catching fire from the fuel leak. Evan didn't stop until dawn. He pulled into a sheriff's outpost 30 miles away, screaming for help. When officers arrived at Grant's Gas and Goods, the building was gone, burned to its foundation. No sign of Cliff, no bodies. The investigation? The sheriff's department searched for weeks but found nothing. No record of Cliff, no permits for a station, nothing in county files. It was as if the building had never existed. But the strange part? They found 3 burned-out vehicles half buried behind the property, all registered to missing persons from the past decade. Evan was taken in for questioning repeatedly. Each time he told the same story. The gas station, the cages, the man in the basement. Eventually they let him go, but his mind never recovered. Months later, he moved to California, started therapy, and avoided highways entirely. But one night, driving through downtown LA, he stopped for gas. Just routine. As he paid inside, he noticed something behind the counter. A framed photo of a smiling attendant. The name tag read Cliff, Employee of the Month. The clerk smiled. Old boss owned a place out in New Mexico before it burned down. Shame, huh? Evan staggered out, his chest tightening. The same humming tune drifted faintly from the back room. The endless road weeks later, Evan got a call from an unknown number. When he answered, there was static, then humming. That same country tune. Still driving, boy? A familiar voice drawled. Road never ends out here. Evan dropped the phone and looked outside. Parked across the street, an old rusted pickup with a cracked windshield. On the seat, visible through the window, was a blood-stained wrench. He called the police again. When they arrived minutes later, the truck was gone. But when Evan opened his mailbox the next morning, there was a single gas receipt inside, printed neatly across the top. Grant's 24-hour gas and goods, pump 3, date, yesterday. For Rachel Simmons, 28, freelance web designer living alone in a renovated apartment building. The quiet building. Rachel had lived on the 3rd floor of a small Portland apartment building for nearly a year. It wasn't luxurious, but it was peaceful. Exposed brick walls, rain tapping softly against her window, and a view of pine trees swaying in the Pacific Northwest mist. The only thing slightly off was her new downstairs neighbor, Mr. Delaney. He was polite but unnervingly quiet, pale. Mid-40s, always wearing the same grey sweater, every night. Around 3 a.m., Rachel would hear soft footsteps pacing beneath her, slow, deliberate, and constant, like someone walking a perfect circle for hours. At first she brushed it off as insomnia. But one night, she heard something different. Between the pacing sounds, she could make out faint whispers. Not random muttering, whispers repeating her name. Rachel, Rachel? She froze in bed, holding her breath. Her phone clock blinked, 3:17 a.m. The pacing stopped. Then a single knock echoed from directly beneath her bed, from the floor. The knock returns. The next morning, Rachel went downstairs to confront Delaney, but his door was already open a crack. Inside, the apartment was spotless, almost unnaturally so. White walls, no furniture except a single chair in the middle of the room facing the ceiling. "Mr. Delaney?" she called. No response. But as she turned to leave, she noticed something on the wall, a row of photographs. Her photographs, shots of her sleeping, cooking, typing on her laptop, all taken from odd angles through blinds or doorways. Her stomach lurched. She stumbled backward, hitting the doorframe. That's when she heard a voice behind her. "You shouldn't be in here." Delaney stood in the hallway, eyes wide, lips trembling with a faint smile. "How did you get those?" Rachel demanded. He tilted his head slightly. "I don't sleep," he whispered. "I watch." Police and paranoia Rachel called the police immediately. They searched Delaney's apartment, confiscated the photos, and promised to look into it. But within a week, Delaney was back, claiming there wasn't enough evidence to press charges. That night, she found her front door slightly ajar when she came home from groceries. Inside, everything looked normal, until she noticed her bedroom window open. The cold air hit her like a slap. She slammed it shut, locked every door, and sat on the couch gripping a kitchen knife. Hours passed. She tried to stay awake. Around 2:45 a.m. the electricity flickered. From below the pacing began again, this time faster. Then a scraping sound against the wall like nails dragging upward. She pressed her ear to the floor. Delaney's voice murmured softly, sing-song, "Rachel, jaws don't stop dreams." Her heart pounded. She called 911 again. They arrived 20 minutes later, found nothing. No sound, no sign of forced entry. But when the officer left, she noticed her couch had moved 6 inches closer to the window. The hidden camera, Rachel couldn't shake the feeling she was being watched. Days later, while cleaning, she noticed something odd. The smoke detector above her bed had a faint blinking red light. It wasn't there before. She climbed up on a chair, unscrewed the device, and froze. Inside was a tiny camera. She ran straight to the landlord, Mr. Klein, a retired man who looked genuinely horrified. "That's not one of ours," he said, trembling. "These units don't even have detectors in that room." He accompanied her back upstairs, but when they entered, the device was gone. Just gone. That night, Rachel packed a bag, planning to stay with her friend, Lauren. But before she could leave, she heard something outside her door. Faint scratching. She peered through the peephole. Nothing. Then suddenly Delaney's face appeared, inches away, smiling. "You moved my things," he whispered through the door. "I'll need them back." Rachel backed away, shaking as the scratching grew louder, then silence. When she finally opened the door, a note was taped to it. "You look beautiful when you sleep." The night visit Lauren convinced Rachel to crash at her place for the night. They laughed nervously, trying to make light of it. Lauren even joked, "Maybe he's just lonely." At 2:58 a.m., Rachel's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You shouldn't have left. I miss our nights." Attached was a photo taken just minutes earlier. It showed Rachel and Lauren asleep on the couch. The phone slipped from Rachel's hands. They locked every door and called 911 again. This time the police arrived within minutes and combed the property. Behind Lauren's house they found footprints leading toward the woods. At the edge of the trees, half buried in mud, was Rachel's missing smoke detector camera, still recording. On playback, the video showed Delaney's face illuminated by flashlight, whispering to the lens, "She thinks walls keep her safe." The basement discovery police obtained a warrant for Delaney's apartment again. This time they discovered a hidden hatch beneath the floorboards, leading to an old maintenance basement that predated the building's renovations. What they found inside made seasoned officers pale. Hundreds of photographs of different women who'd lived in the building over decades. Each photo was labeled with the same name written over it, Rachel. When asked, Delaney claimed it was art. He insisted he wasn't hurting anyone, just keeping them company. Rachel was told to file a restraining order, and Delaney was sent for psychiatric evaluation. But due to insufficient threat evidence, he was released within weeks. Rachel moved to a new apartment on the other side of the city. New locks, new number, new start. For a while the silence felt healing, until one morning she received a package at her new address. Inside, a framed photo of her sleeping, and a note, "Walls change." "I don't." The breaking point, Rachel stopped sleeping. Every creak of the floorboards felt like footsteps. Every parked car looked suspicious. She bought a gun, installed cameras, and even hired a private investigator. The investigator found no trace of Delaney, no employment records, no criminal file, no driver's license. It was as if he never existed. Then one night, as Rachel reviewed her security footage, her screen glitched. A single frame appeared, distorted, showing Delaney's reflection in her living room mirror, smiling directly at the camera. She screamed, running for the door, but every lock jammed simultaneously. The lights flickered. A whisper filled the air. "Rachel, do you see me now?" She fired her gun blindly into the dark. Silence. When police arrived, they found no intruder, only shattered glass and Rachel trembling, insisting he was there. Her footage, corrupted. Only static remained. The endless watching. A year later, Rachel lived in another state under a new name, Melissa Kane. Therapy, medication, and distance helped. She finally started sleeping again, until one night she woke to a faint click. Her bedside lamp flickered, and on the wall opposite her bed, a tiny red light blinked. She froze. Then through the vent above her, a voice whispered softly, "Found you." Rachel ran from the room barefoot, calling the police once again. But when they arrived, they found no devices, no evidence, no sign of anyone breaking in. Later, as she scrolled through her new phone, she noticed something chilling. One contact already saved in her favorites list. "Mr. Delaney." She deleted it instantly, Massey, but it reappeared seconds later. This time, the status below the name read, "Active now."